So U.S. military assets continue to flow into the Middle East in preparation for what could be strikes against Iran. But here's the thing. Americans don't really want us to get involved. So I thought it would be worth today running through some statements for and against U.S. military intervention in this conflict. We've got a couple arguments on each side of the aisle, but I want to start out with a poll that was just released on YouGov. This was a question asked of 1,512 Americans between June 13th and 16th. So it's important to note these questions were asked after Israel had begun military operations against Iran. They said 60% think that the United States should not get involved in the conflict between Israel and Iran. 16% support U.S. military action. 24% are unsure. You can actually see the party breakdown here as well, and it's pretty similar across all parties, all things considered. Like we tend to not agree on anything. This is all pretty much in line. 65% of Democrats oppose military intervention, 61% of independents, and 53% of Republicans opposing U.S. involvement. The reason I wanted to start with this poll is I think if you watch traditional media, at least, and we're going to run through some of those clips here today, you might get the polar opposite opinion that the United States is chomping at the bit to get involved. Or if you just look at our military posture, which is worth running through here real quick. I mean, just a few hours ago, Jennifer Griffin of Fox News broke the story that the Navy has added additional missile destroyers to the Middle East, saying, quote, "The U.S. Navy now has 5 guided missile destroyers in the Eastern Mediterranean, according to U.S. defense officials. This is a significant increase. Earlier this week, the U.S. had just 1 in the Eastern Med. Following Israel's attack on Iran, the U.S. had 2 positioned in the Eastern Med off the coast, which helped protect Israel by shooting down incoming missiles from Iran." So from 1 to 2 to 5 very quickly. And I should note that right out the gate, we did get indications reporting that the United States did have assets assisting Israel in the interception of some of these munitions. Defensive mission in nature, but no doubt a risk to our service members. We've not heard any updates on that front, so it's not clear if we have stopped assisting with those interceptions or if that reporting is just not coming out. Now, in addition to the added missile destroyers making its way to the Middle East, this comes on top of the USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group, which is set to arrive in the Middle East any day now. They're coming over from the Pacific. They're joining the USS Carl Vinson Carrier Strike Group. And then in recent months, really, we've seen F-35s, F-16s, B-52s. I think the B-2s actually left, although they could have gone back to Diego Garcia or elsewhere in the Middle East. THAAD and Patriot missile defense batteries have been added to the Middle East, a handful of those taken from the Pacific theater. And then just in recent days, more than 30 refueling aircraft moved to the region. So there has been a significant surge in U.S. military forces to the Middle East, kind of suggesting that we very well might get involved. Now, Reuters actually did a really good job in an article titled "Mapping the Conflict," laying out kind of the location of U.S. military assets across the region. It's not a secret. These are semi-permanent bases that we have there. But they say the U.S. has already moved some aircraft and ships from bases that may be vulnerable to any potential Iranian attack. We've seen this with aircraft that are normally stored outside being moved away from airfields, and only those under cover remain, and some ships in port that were kind of moored together side by side, a la Pearl Harbor back in the day, right? Though not quite to that extent. We've seen some of those move out of port, so they're not no longer stationary targets. To a degree, that's kind of the wartime footing, right? You're expecting some sort of attack, or at least in trying to prevent an attack or mitigate what might happen during an attack, you're moving those assets out. But they say the U.S. Embassy in Qatar also issued an alert on Thursday temporarily restricting its personnel from accessing Al Udeid Air Base, the largest U.S. military installation in the Middle East, which is located outside of Doha. They say Washington has also begun deploying more fighter aircraft, including F-16s, F-22s, missed those earlier, and F-35s to the Middle East, and extending the deployment of other warplanes, bolstering forces that can defend personnel and facilities by shooting down drones and other projectiles. So again, the actions that we're seeing here are really leaning towards U.S. military strikes. Like, I would not be shocked if I wake up tomorrow morning and find out that the United States had begun strikes against especially Fordo, the deep-buried nuclear facility in Iran that Israel we don't believe has the capabilities to destroy that as quickly as the United States might with some of our specially designed deep penetration bombs. Now, one of the reasons I feel like this is a topic worth getting into is there's some disagreement inside the U.S. intelligence community at the very top, starting with the president. There was a clip that just came out a few minutes ago speaking to this, and I think this resonates then across the entire population, because when you're looking at this conflict, trying to decide should the United States get involved or not, a lot of it hinges on the statement. Israel in recent days has said that Iran was days away from making the decision to develop a nuclear weapon. And that's not in line with recent U.S. intelligence estimates. But here, let's give a quick look at a clip. President Trump being asked that very direct question about this discrepancy, and here's his answer.
So you have that Iran is building a nuclear weapon. Your intelligence community has said they have no evidence that they are at this point.
Well, then my intelligence community is wrong. Who in the intelligence community said that?
Your Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard.
She's wrong.
So here's the thing, like no matter how you split that, that's a problem. If President Trump does not believe his intelligence community, which is made up of 18 or more agencies, right? So this is not like saying, I don't trust the CIA or I don't trust the DIA. The intelligence community is a very broad organization with a lot of individual assessments that they kind of roll up together. So if our president is saying, I don't trust the intelligence community and their assessments, that's a problem at baseline, right? No matter who the president is, no matter what the issue is, that's an issue. But also an issue is if he's looking at, in this case, Tulsi Gabbard, the new Director of National Intelligence, saying, I don't trust her, I don't believe her, that's also a problem. So there's not really a good scenario here, and I think this is probably playing into how we're getting some pretty animated arguments in both sides right now, arguing for or against U.S. military intervention. Now, starting out, I want to go with General Jack Keane here, a retired U.S. Army general, talking about how the United States should green light attacks against Iran. So we're going to play a couple clips of people arguing in favor of U.S. military intervention. We'll talk about those, and then we'll shift over to those arguing against, saying this is not the right time to take that action. Here we go.
Do you believe the president should green light a Fordo hit using the bunker busters?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think it'll be effective? Do you worry at all about it being able to wipe it out?
I think there's challenges when you go in 300 feet for sure, at the bottom of a mountain. We've never actually done that. That doesn't mean you don't do it. I mean, Normandy was 50-50. I mean, it doesn't mean you don't do it. The alternative, I think, is unacceptable.
All right, so a retired general, kind of full steam ahead, but to be fair, he's not the one that actually would have to participate in this operation, but you can hear pretty hawkish. You know, we don't necessarily know it would be successful, but that doesn't mean you don't take the chance. But he's also asked, kind of from your experience, do you think the president is being advised to do this, to carry out the strikes on Iran? Here's what he had to say.
Do you believe that the president's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Secretary of Defense, DNI, do you believe they're advising him to do this?
I would suspect they are. If they asked, what they do is they lay out options and then the risk associated with everything, and then the president would ask, what's your recommendation?
All right, so I do want to make sure that we include some lawmakers here as well, right? I've got a couple pundits we're going to talk to that do have a lot of influence. You know, we're playing Fox News there. And later we've got Steve Bannon, who, again, media personality, but a lot of influence over the president and people in his immediate circle. So I do think it's worth seeing the message that he is trying to get out there. But shifting to lawmakers here, we've got Byron Donalds, who is a Republican out of Florida. His take on this whole assessment is, yes, we should go ahead. Essentially, this is an opportunity. The opportunity is there. We should take it. Let's give that a listen.
We are being presented with a major threat from Iran with respect to nuclear weapons. That is crystal clear at this point. Everybody knows that. We're not talking about WMDs in Iraq. We're talking about nukes in Iran. Very different situation. So if the president is presented with an opportunity where we essentially use some of our weaponry to take out this last nuclear facility in Iran, I think that's an opportunity that we have to take. I do not want boots on the ground. I do not want soldiers in harm's way. I don't want to be an extended nation building in Iran, but this is an opportunity, like you said, that is historic that we might have to take.
So one thing that I like Donald's really stresses here, a little bit of nuance, right, is he's saying we could use strikes, but no nation building, no boots on the ground. And a personal assessment here is if the United States ends up going ahead with some sort of military action here, I think there's going to be an overwhelming push in the media to don't say war. It's not a war. We're not starting a war. We're just carrying out a wave of strikes to facilitate the end of the Iranian nuclear program, which in a perfect world could be the case. We're going to get to some pushback on that in a minute here from Senator Rand Paul, but that's kind of what Representative Donalds is leading with here. A couple strikes, opportunity is there. We should end this thing once and for all. And that's kind of the direction that Senator Tom Cotton, another Republican, takes as well. Though the way that I read this is he's kind of messaging to President Trump, saying the opportunity is there, and hey, Mr. President, history will look kindly upon you if you decide to take this choice. Although they do kind of talk in this one a little bit about the need to get American personnel on the ground for verification purposes. And I feel like we start going down a slippery slope when we have that conversation. But nonetheless, the last one here arguing in favor of military strikes, Senator Tom Cotton. Here we go.
If they can't use this to buy time to rebuild their arsenal or to go deeper into their nuclear program, to me, it would almost have to be next day or within 2 days, no more than a week, Americans on the ground in the Fordo facility, beginning the process of scientifically figuring out how to dismantle it, but it would also include anywhere, any place, anytime inspections. And they have to give up their long-range missiles and, frankly, any missile that has a range to hit any American target in the region. I think that would be a fair deal, considering they have no leverage and their back's against the wall because the Israelis have kicked their ass.
Yeah, and Sean, I don't think the president is going to allow the Ayatollahs to tap him along the way so many other presidents have. This is the chance to bring this chapter to a close. History will look back kindly on Donald Trump for ending this menace to the United States, to our friends in the region, to the civilized world. And as you said, he's going to make a decision within 2 weeks. Could be 2 days, could be 2 hours. The Ayatollahs need to act fast if they want to avoid the worst possible fate at Fordo. It's going to be closed one way or the other.
So a couple different flavors there of, yes, the United States should be involved in some way, shape, or form to shut down the Iranian nuclear program. I don't want to pretend that represents the entirety of that argument, right? I'm sifting through the internet trying to find a handful of examples, making the arguments on both sides. Entirely possible, probably likely that I missed a couple in each direction. But shifting over to the other side here, those pushing back that are, according to the polling from YouGov, are actually in line with the American public, that 60% say we don't want to get involved. Speaking to that, starting with Senator Rand Paul here, with a message that I think resonates well, where he says, hey, we don't know exactly what this would lead to. And he gets into the argument that this could end up with nation building. And do we really want to do that? Do we want to get into the regime change conversations? Are we willing to bite that off right now? Here's Senator Paul.
I still might hope that he will not bomb. And the reason is this. What is unknown with the bombing is what happens next. So there are two distinct possibilities, maybe 3 or 4 distinct possibilities. One possibility is you bomb Fordo and it's completely successful. Iran unconditionally surrenders, as the president's asking them to do. We want to be part of the community of nations, and we've been wrong. We're sorry, and we're going to try to do better. Now, given their behavior over the last 20 or 30 years, and given the behavior of most nations that are, bombed repeatedly, it typically you get the opposite reaction. Usually it breeds nationalism. Even the people who don't like the mullahs, they all run together to hold the flag. They actually have a national unifying moment. If that happens, one, they give up. That'd be great, and that'd be the intended result. But if they don't give up, what if they decide that they're gravely humiliated by this, and their only way of saving face is to create the bomb as soon and as quickly as possible, and that they race towards it? For months now, or actually for years, people have been saying they're only weeks away from having enrichment capability of having a bomb. There is one possibility that the bombing promotes them and provokes them to going ahead and making a bomb. So that's a possibility.
Look, Senator Paul has a lot of good points here. On the one hand, this is being presented as it's going to be quick and easy. Get in, hit those nuclear sites, and move on out. End of the story. But there's a lot of other aspects to this as well. And to be fair, Senator Cotton hit on this a bit, or maybe it was Hannity that was interviewing him, but nonetheless saying you can't just hit the facility and assume that everything is done. There's going to have to be some sort of follow-up procedure to make sure that the facility, boots on the ground to make sure that, or inspectors on the ground, to make sure it is actually destroyed and that, the material and the know-how and the technology is not spread to other portions of Iran. So it is a complex issue, and I don't think it's accurate to present it as you just strike or you just don't. There's a lot of gray in between there. And to that end, Steve Bannon, who we don't usually use a lot of his clips here, but nonetheless, he does have a big audience that he's speaking to on the right, and he's pushing this, and he's been adamant, very consistent for what it's worth, saying, no, we should not get involved. Israel can handle this on their own. It's important. Iran should not have a nuclear weapon, full stop. Let Israel do it on their own, like they are right now. Here we go.
Our position here at the War Room has been pretty straightforward. We absolutely believe that the Ayatollah and those guys can't get a nuclear weapon. The way to do that is President Trump's negotiations, a deal, or economic warfare. It's pretty clear that this urgency, this rush, and now kind of flipping to say it's got to be regime change. It's on every paper. We called this Friday morning when the assault happened. We said it looks like a decapitation, not just of the nuclear program, but of much of their general staff in a regime change or regime destruction. We still stand by that. And our line is quite simply, Netanyahu, just finish what you started. Fox News right there reiterates, and they know because they're the propaganda arm of this, they know they have the ability to do it. Finish what you started.
Now, look, there was a whole much longer clip of Bannon talking with Alex Jones earlier today, who the man's got a glow to him. I don't know if you've seen pictures of him recently, but long rant about how this would actually lead, ipso facto to thermonuclear war. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, and it was a long rant. So I spared you that one today, but if you want to check that out, you can go check that one out. I want to wrap up here with another representative. This is a Democratic representative from California, Ro Khanna, actually cites some of this polling data about how Americans generally don't want to get involved with this. And again, he is pushing against U.S. military intervention. Here we go.
So I thought it'd be useful to show some polling, the first that we have on this. And again, this is early. I think these are fairly dynamic situations that can change. And obviously there are parts of, like, say, Fox News that are trying to change this. But this is the first polling we have. Economist YouGov. Among U.S. adults, should the U.S. military get involved in Iran? That's a big number. Yes, 16%. No, 60%. Don't know, 24%. Among Republicans, yes, 23%. No, 53%. 24% don't know. You surprised by that?
I'm not. I mean, this country is weary and exhausted of war. Frankly, I'd like the Democratic Party at least to be unified in calling for these resolutions, Senator Kaine, Senator Sanders, and mine in the House, to come for a vote. I mean, you should have Senator Schumer was frankly ambiguous in whether he wants to stand against this war. We need to be clearly positioning ourselves against the war. Now, some people will say, oh, there's support when you look at a strike on Fordo to take out the nuclear facility. It's more close in the polls. That's like if you had asked in the Iraq war context, do you want to take out surgically Saddam Hussein? I'm sure you would have gotten support for that. The problem is wars never end that way.
Right.
And it's inevitable. It will draw us into a messier war, and Americans don't want that.
All right, so another reason I wanted to showcase all of these today is to show that this isn't necessarily a partisan issue right now. It seems like it might be kind of trending in that direction, especially with the media. We're definitely seeing more right-leaning media in favor of military action and more left-leaning media talking more about restraint and we should get back to the negotiating table. But when you look at lawmakers, it's not an even split right now. We're seeing we're seeing some folks on the right shift over into, hey, we don't need to get involved in another conflict. We don't need to start dropping more bombs on another country in the Middle East. And we're seeing some folks on the left that are just relatively quiet and just kind of letting this progress and not being an anti-war outspoken voice that you might otherwise expect. So it's messy here in the United States right now, and hopefully this helped to clear up a little. I'm sure it didn't clear anything up, but it maybe provided a little more insight into the arguments being made on each side. Again, right now it looks like the general public is opposed to military intervention. When you look at our politicians and kind of national media, I would say that actually skews a bit more towards actually carrying out strikes against Iran. So as President Trump said, we've got 2 weeks. Wait and see what happens in that time period. That's all I got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.